The last thing Albert Einstein wrote before he passed away was about God. Not the God you learned about in Sunday school, not the bearded figure in the sky, the one who judges and rewards. Something else entirely, something that took him 70 years of searching to even begin to understand, and something that the world has still never fully grasped. On April 17, 1955, Einstein collapsed from internal bleeding. His aortic aneurysm, which doctors had reinforced 7 years earlier, was rupturing. They rushed him to Princeton Hospital and offered emergency surgery. Einstein refused. He said, "I want to go when I want. It is tasteless to prolong life artificially. I have done my share. It is time to go. I will do it elegantly." But before the end came, Einstein made one final request. He asked for paper and pencils to be brought to his hospital bed. Even as his body was failing, his mind refused to stop working. He had something he needed to write, something about God that he had spent his entire life trying to understand. When Einstein died the next morning, nurses found 12 pages of handwritten equations scattered around his bed, 12 pages of mathematical symbols crossed out and rewritten, representing his final attempt to solve the greatest mystery of the universe. But here is what most people don't know. Those equations weren't just about physics. They were Einstein's attempt to describe what he called the mind of God, the fundamental structure of reality, the equation that would reveal how everything connects to everything else. And alongside those equations, they found something else, an unfinished speech about Israel, a letter about human weakness, and scattered notes that revealed Einstein's final thoughts about the divine. This is the story they never told you, the story of what Einstein was really trying to say about God in his final hours, and why his message matters more now than ever before. Let me take you back to the beginning. Throughout his life, Einstein was obsessed with one question, not whether God exists. That question, he believed, was too simple. The real question was, what kind of God could create a universe that follows mathematical laws so precise that humans can discover them? In 1930, Einstein published an essay in the New York Times magazine that shocked the religious establishment. He described 3 types of religious feeling. The first was primitive fear of nature. The second was social morality, backed by a judgmental deity. But the third type, Einstein said, was different from anything most people had experienced. He called it the cosmic religious feeling. This feeling, Einstein wrote, knows no dogma and no God conceived in man's image. It is the sense of awe that overcomes you when you glimpse the underlying order of the universe. The realization that everything, from the smallest particle to the largest galaxy, follows patterns that can be expressed in mathematics. Einstein said, "The individual feels the sublimity and marvelous order which reveal themselves in nature, and he wants to experience the universe as a single, significant whole." A single, significant whole. This was Einstein's obsession, not proving God exists or doesn't exist, but understanding how everything connects, how the force that moves planets is related to the force that holds atoms together, how consciousness emerges from matter, how the equations that describe reality point to something beyond themselves. For 30 years before his death, Einstein worked on what he called the unified field theory, a single set of equations that would describe all the forces in the universe, gravity and electromagnetism, and the nuclear forces, all unified into one elegant mathematical statement. He never finished it. Most physicists of his era thought he was wasting his time. Quantum mechanics was the future, they said. The unified field was a dream, they said. But Einstein refused to stop. He believed that quantum mechanics was incomplete, that there had to be a deeper layer of reality, where everything made sense, where randomness dissolved into order, where God did not play dice with the universe. This was not stubbornness, this was faith, not faith in a religious doctrine, but faith in the intelligibility of nature, faith that the universe was built on principles simple enough for human minds to grasp, faith that if he just kept working, kept scribbling equations, kept crossing out and starting over, eventually the truth would reveal itself. And he kept that faith until his final breath. But here is what makes those final 12 pages so extraordinary. Einstein was not just trying to describe physics, he was trying to describe the mind of God, the mathematical structure that underlies all of existence. The reason why the universe is orderly rather than chaotic, the why behind the what. In a letter written a few months before his death, Einstein confided to a friend, "I cannot rest until I have unified the gravitational and electromagnetic fields. The final truth must be simple, if only I were able to see it." The final truth must be simple. This was Einstein's deepest conviction about God. Not a complex deity with human emotions and judgments, but a simple underlying order that expresses itself in mathematical beauty. A God who is not separate from nature, but identical with it. Einstein learned this idea from a philosopher named Baruch Spinoza, who lived 300 years earlier. Spinoza was excommunicated by his own religious community for teaching that God and nature are the same thing, that there is no supernatural realm separate from the natural world, that the divine is found in the laws of physics, not in miracles that violate them. Einstein said, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the harmony of all that exists, not in a God who concerns himself with the fate and doings of mankind." Think about what this means. Einstein did not believe in a God who listens to prayers or answers them. He did not believe in heaven or hell or judgment after death. He did not believe the Bible was anything more than, in his words, a collection of venerable but still rather primitive legends. But Einstein also refused to call himself an atheist. When atheists tried to claim him as one of their own, he pushed back firmly. He said, "I am not an atheist. What separates me from most so-called atheists is a feeling of utter humility toward the unattainable secrets of the harmony of the cosmos." A feeling of utter humility. This is crucial. Einstein's rejection of traditional religion was not arrogance, it was humility. He believed that human images of God were too small, that our tribal deities and reward-punishment systems were projections of human weakness onto the infinite. The real God, Einstein believed, was far stranger and more magnificent than anything human imagination could create. And this brings us to the most controversial document Albert Einstein ever wrote. In January 1954, just 15 months before his death, Einstein received a book from a philosopher named Erich Gutkind. The book argued that the Jewish people had a special relationship with God, that the Bible contained divine wisdom that science could never provide. Einstein's response became known as the God Letter. It sold at auction in 2018 for nearly $3 million, and its content scandalized religious believers around the world. Einstein wrote, "The word God is for me nothing more than the expression and product of human weaknesses. The Bible is a collection of honorable but still primitive legends, which are nevertheless pretty childish." He continued, "For me, the Jewish religion, like all other religions, is an incarnation of the most childish superstition." These words seem harsh. They seem like the pronouncements of someone who hated religion, who wanted to destroy faith, who had only contempt for believers. But that is not what Einstein meant. You have to understand the context. Einstein had witnessed the worst of religious tribalism. He had seen how people use God to justify hatred, how the chosen people narrative had been used to exclude and persecute throughout history, how religious certainty had led to wars and inquisitions and genocides. Einstein was not attacking the genuine religious impulse. He was attacking the corruption of that impulse, the way humans take something sacred, the sense of awe before the infinite, and turn it into a weapon, a justification for their own prejudices, a way to feel superior to those who believe differently. The God letter was not a rejection of God. It was a rejection of human smallness, dressed up as divine truth. Read the letter carefully, and you see something else. You see a man frustrated that humans keep reducing the infinite to something they can control, that we keep creating gods in our own image instead of surrendering to the genuine mystery of existence. Einstein was not attacking spirituality. He was attacking the smallness of human religion, the tendency to create comfortable stories instead of facing uncomfortable truths, the desire to have a God who takes sides in our conflicts, who rewards our group and punishes our enemies. The real God, Einstein believed, does not take sides. The real God is the mathematical structure of reality itself, impersonal but not cold, ordered but not controlling, beautiful, beyond anything human art could create. And Einstein spent his final hours trying to write the equations that would describe this God. Now, here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Alongside those 12 pages of unified field equations, nurses found another document in Einstein's hospital room, an unfinished speech he was preparing to deliver on television. The speech was about Israel. Einstein was scheduled to address the American people on all major networks to commemorate the 7th anniversary of Israel's independence. He had been working on the speech with the Israeli consulate and Ambassador Abba Eban. He considered it important enough to bring the draft with him to the hospital. He died 8 days before he could deliver it. The fact that Einstein was working on this speech in his final days tells us something important about his priorities. He was not just a physicist, lost in abstract equations. He was a man who cared about the fate of his people, about the future of a nation born from the ashes of genocide, about whether peace was possible in a world that seemed determined to destroy itself. Einstein had been offered the presidency of Israel in 1952. He declined, saying he lacked the natural aptitude and experience necessary for dealing with human beings. But his refusal was not indifference. He cared deeply. He just knew his strengths lay elsewhere. The speech began, "This is the 7th anniversary of the establishment of the State of Israel. The establishment of this state was internationally approved and recognized, largely for the purpose of rescuing the remnant of the Jewish people from unspeakable horrors of persecution and oppression." Einstein went on to argue passionately for peace between Israel and its neighbors. He believed that the ideals of peace and brotherhood were, in his words, the most significant contribution of the people of Israel in its long history. Why does this matter? Because it shows that Einstein's rejection of religious superstition did not mean he had no spiritual commitments. He cared deeply about ethics, about justice, about the survival of a people who had faced genocide, about peace in a region torn by conflict. Einstein's cosmic religious feeling was not abstract or disconnected from human concerns. It was the foundation for his moral commitments. Because if all things are one, if separation is an illusion, then hurting others is ultimately hurting yourself. Peace is not just politically wise, it is cosmically necessary. This is the Einstein that history has tried to forget. The Einstein who saw no conflict between scientific rigor and spiritual depth, who rejected childish superstition but embraced cosmic mystery, who spent his final hours writing equations about the mind of God while also writing about human peace. But there is one more piece of this puzzle. Einstein's very last words were spoken, not written. On the morning of April 18, 1955, shortly after 1 a.m., Einstein woke briefly. He said something in German to his night nurse, and then he died. The nurse did not speak German. She did not understand what he said. Einstein's final words were lost forever. Her name was Alberta Rosel. She was alone with Einstein when he died. She heard his final utterance, the last communication of one of the greatest minds in human history, and she had no idea what it meant. The words dissolved into the air of that hospital room, never to be recovered. Some have speculated about what he might have said. A prayer, perhaps, a final equation, a message to his first wife Mileva, or his sons, Hans Albert and Eduard, a greeting to Michel Besso, who had died just weeks before, or perhaps just an expression of wonder at what he was finally seeing. We will never know. Think about that. The greatest mind of the 20th century spoke his last message in his native tongue. It could have been about God. It could have been about his equations. It could have been about Israel, or peace, or the unified field theory. It could have been something he had never told anyone. We will never know, but perhaps that is fitting. Perhaps Einstein's final message was not meant for us. Perhaps it was meant for whatever he encountered in that moment between life and death, a greeting to the cosmic order. He had spent his life studying, a recognition that he was about to rejoin the whole from which he had temporarily separated. In a letter written shortly before his death to the family of his friend, Mike Besso, Einstein described death this way: "Now he has departed from this strange world, a little ahead of me. That means nothing. People like us, who believe in physics, know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." If Einstein believed this, then death was not an ending. It was simply a change in perspective, the you who is alive and the you who has died. Both exist in the four-dimensional space-time that his own equations describe. Death is not destruction, it is transition. And perhaps his final words, spoken in German to a nurse who could not understand them, were words of wonder at what he was finally seeing, the unified field, the mind of God, the pattern behind all patterns. We will never know what Einstein said, but we know what he wrote. 12 pages of equations attempting to describe how everything connects to everything else, an unfinished speech about peace and brotherhood, and scattered throughout his letters and essays, a vision of God that neither believers nor atheists have fully understood. Einstein's God was not a person. It was not a force that answers prayers or judges souls. It was not separate from nature, but identical with it. It was the mathematical order that makes science possible, the reason why the universe is comprehensible at all. And Einstein died trying to write the equation that would express this God in symbols that anyone could understand. He failed. The unified field theory remains unfinished. The equations by his deathbed were full of corrections and dead ends. The final truth he sought remained just beyond his grasp. Or did he? There is another way to look at Einstein's failure, Perhaps he did not fail at all. Perhaps the equations were never the point. Perhaps what mattered was the search itself, the willingness to keep asking questions, the refusal to accept incomplete answers, the faith that the universe is comprehensible, even when comprehension eludes us. In this sense, Einstein succeeded magnificently. He showed us what it means to pursue truth with everything you have, to spend your final hours reaching for understanding rather than comfort, to die with a pencil in your hand rather than resignation in your heart. The unified field theory may never be completed, but Einstein's example of how to search with humility and persistence and wonder, that example is complete, and it may be more valuable than any equation could ever be. But perhaps that is the deepest lesson of all. Perhaps the God Einstein believed in is not something that can be captured in equations. Perhaps the cosmic religious feeling is something you experience, not something you prove. Perhaps the harmony of all that exists is something you glimpse in moments of wonder, not something you calculate on a piece of paper. Einstein said, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He to whom the emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead." The mysterious. This is what Einstein worshipped, not a God he could define, not a heaven he could describe, but the sheer fact that anything exists at all. The miracle of mathematical order in a universe that could have been chaos. The wonder that consciousness can emerge from matter and ask questions about its own origin. If you have stayed with me through this exploration of Einstein's final writings about God, then you understand something important. You understand that the conflict between science and religion is often a false conflict, that the greatest scientific minds have often been the most spiritually aware, that rejecting childish superstition is not the same as rejecting mystery. Einstein was not an atheist. He was not a traditional believer. He was something harder to categorize, a man who stood in AW before the universe, who spent his life trying to understand its deepest patterns, who died with equations in his hand and wonder in his heart. Channels that explore these questions honestly are rare. Most religious content tells you what to believe. Most scientific content tells you what not to believe. But the truth is, stranger than either side admits. When you click the Super Thanks button below this video, you're not just supporting a channel, you're supporting the kind of exploration that Einstein himself valued. Questions that refuse easy answers. Wonder that does not pretend to certainty. The cosmic religious feeling that knows no dogma. Your support keeps these conversations alive. Thank you to everyone who has already contributed. You are the reason we can keep asking the questions that matter. Namjet, let me leave you with what I believe Einstein was really trying to say in his final hours. The unified field theory was not just about physics, it was about meaning. Einstein believed that if he could write the equation that unified all forces, he would be revealing something about why the universe exists, why there is something rather than nothing, why that something is ordered rather than chaotic. He never found the equation, but his search revealed something perhaps more important, the fact that humans can search at all, the fact that our minds, made of the same atoms as stars, can ask questions about the origin of those atoms, the fact that mathematical symbols on paper can describe the behavior of galaxies billions of light years away. This is the miracle Einstein worshipped, not a God who created the universe from outside, but a universe that somehow creates minds capable of understanding it, a cosmos that becomes conscious of itself through beings like you and me. And if this is true, then Einstein's final equations were more than an intellectual exercise. They were a form of prayer, an attempt to commune with the infinite through the language of mathematics, a reaching toward the God he believed in, but could never fully grasp. The last thing Einstein wrote before he died was about God. Not the God of any religion, not the God that atheists deny, but the God that reveals himself in the harmony of all that exists, the God that is identical with nature, the God that you glimpse when you stand in wonder before the night sky, or the equations that describe it. Einstein died reaching for that God. He never quite grasped it, but his reach showed us what it means to be truly human, to stand in awe before mystery, to search for truth even when it eludes us, to write equations until our final breath. This is the legacy of Einstein's last writing, not the unified field theory he never completed, but the example of a life devoted to understanding, a mind that refused to stop wondering, a spirit that saw no conflict between science and the sacred. Those 12 pages of equations are now archived at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Anyone can view them online. They show a mind working furiously to the end, crossing out errors, trying new approaches, refusing to give up. They are not the answer Einstein was looking for, but they are something perhaps more precious. They are evidence of a human being who never stopped searching for truth. And now, the question passes to you. What would you write in your final hours? What truth would you reach for? What God would you try to understand? Einstein spent his last night on Earth scribbling equations about the mind of God. His final words were lost because the nurse did not speak German. His unified field theory remains unfinished, but his question remains: what connects everything to everything else? What is the pattern behind all patterns? What did Einstein glimpse in those final hours that made him refuse surgery and ask only for paper and pencil? Comment: equations, if you believe Einstein was searching for a scientific truth, a mathematical description of reality that would finally explain everything. Comment message: if you believe Einstein was searching for something beyond science, a meaning that cannot be captured in symbols, a God that mathematics can only point toward, but never contain. And tell me, have you ever experienced what Einstein called the cosmic religious feeling? That sense of awe before the mystery of existence? That moment when science and spirituality seem to be the same thing? I read every comment in the first 2 hours, and this conversation is one of the most important we can have, because Einstein's search is not over. It continues in everyone who refuses to accept easy answers, everyone who stands in wonder before the universe, everyone who believes that the final truth, whatever it is, must be simple and beautiful. Share your thoughts, whatever they are. Einstein would have wanted the conversation to continue,